Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish Prism. Brought to you by Barhead.
Well, folks, welcome back to Through a Scottish Prism. Lovely to have you back. It's been a week since we had a wee chat. So here we are again. It's been a really eventful week, lots to talk about. And to help me this week, I go through what's been happening and looking at everything through our Scottish Prism. I'm joined by my good friend, Yvonne Ridley from down there in Jedburgh. Yvonne, hello, my friend. How are you?
Yes, very well. Thank you. Lovely sunny day.
Yeah, it's looking nice and bright and sunny there. Same here, nice and warm. Been a heck of a week, Yvonne, and we've got a heck of a week in front of us. We have to start with Nicola's announced that she's going to have she's going to make an announcement on Tuesday about how she's going to carry forward the referendum, legally or otherwise. She's going to give us a plan A, plan B. And I should just say at this point, folks, that we will be doing a live show covering that very statement by Nicola. And I'll be joined by Yvonne, and I'll be hopefully joined by Phil, who can't be with us today due to an industrial dispute in Myanmar, believe it or not. I'll be joined also by Eva Conray, by Tommy Sheridan, and by the Westminster leader for the Alba Party, Neil Handy, and a few other people might pop in as well. And we're going to talk and discuss. We want to involve you as well and what Nicola says, because it's very important to Scotland that we're going to go forward and we're going to see exactly what the plan is. Are you excited about that, Yvonne?
In a word, no. And I really wish that I was. And I've been trying to G myself up. But I've been up the hill so many times, being told, get on your marks, get set, and it's going to happen. And frankly now, like so many other people, I'm sitting there thinking, well, let's wait and see what she has to say. And, frankly, I'm just not inspired with any confidence, which makes me incredibly sad because, I moved to Scotland because of independence. I moved here back in 2011, and 2014 was a great benchmark from which to launch, but we've had so many false starts. Mm-hmm. I would love it if Nicola proves me wrong, and I think there are tens of thousands of us out there that all want to be proven wrong when she makes her announcement. Then we'll get the detail, but I'm just really nervous about the whole thing because I think there'll be so many caveats inserted and so much prevarication, and I'm very nervous.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing, I've been calling for unity for a long while, and I remember saying just a week ago or so and put out saying, look, we've got 12 days. Now's the time for Nicola to unite the Yes movement and bring us all together to get us ready for this next phase. And rather than do that, actually, it brings us to another point this week, which happened with the disgrace of Patrick Grady, who has been found guilty of a sexual assault against a young intern, got a 2-day suspension, which boggles the mind for a start. And then instead of, she used that occasion in First Minister's questions this week to have another attack at Alex Salmond. Now, that's hardly going to bring back unity to the entire movement, is it?
Well, it was unfortunate that she did that as well. Alex Salmond has been completely exonerated by a jury, and unlike this Westminster MP, who, he is a sex pest. And he's been given a 2-day suspension, which speaks volumes about the misogyny that is awash in Westminster. And the secret recording that came out of the SNP Westminster MPs, I thought was quite
Disgusting.
appalling, really appalling. Well, it was appalling on so many levels. And, you know, it just shows that that Westminster is, you know, it's a nest of vipers already, and it's having a very negative impact on the SNP. And I just find it appalling that somebody would go into a meeting with a tape recorder. And then what I also found appalling was the lengths which some MPs went to protect this sex pest. When really, you know, he should be out on his ear, and he should have had the whip withdrawn. And if he'd had any honour at all about him, he would have resigned.
Yeah.
And we would be looking at a by-election now.
Yeah, I mean, the fact is someone put on Twitter, you know, Alex Salmond was acquitted in all accounts by a female majority jury. And there's Ian Blackford caught in tape saying, you know, protecting a sex pest. Nicola Sturgeon, she's saying that, you know, one should be removed from politics forever, e.g. Alex Salmond should never, who's found innocent, just been accused, but found innocent, he should never be in politics again, she'll have nothing to do with him. And the other one Patrick Grady, should reflect on what he's done and be admitted back into speech. When Ian Blackford was interviewed by Bernard Ponsonby, he said similarly, you know, well, you can't hold this against people forever, and they should be allowed to, you know, rehabilitate and back into politics, but not for Alex Salmond, apparently, or anyone in the Alba party. The hypocrisy, it's on steroids, Yvonne.
Yes, unfortunately, it seems as though a lot of the SNP MPs have picked up the habits of the other Westminster MPs. I mean, the Tory benches are awash with all sorts of odious characters. Who...
Well, that's why you had two by-elections there in England this week. One for you know, raping an underage boy by one Tory MP, and the other one was for watching pornography in the House of Commons, and they had to resign. But the other one is the thing about this recording that was done. Now, it has to be an inside job, Yvonne. You're like a bag of vipers, rats fighting over a corpse. You know, whoever did that knew they were going to hurt their colleagues, obviously trying to discredit Ian Blackford, someone that's looking perhaps to take over the leadership.
Well, as I say, you know, it is a nest of vipers, and they've been in Westminster for so long now that they've picked up, some of them have picked up the bad habits of the MPs on the Tory and the Labour benches. I mean, you know, there's Westminster is awash with hypocrites.
Yeah, I'm sorry to say, so is the SNP. But two other things happening. Talking of hypocrisy, two big things this week. Nicola Sturgeon was in Italy at a conference on women's rights and protecting women and encouraging women in the workplace, etc. And she made a big speech about, you know, how women are under danger and they have to be given protection. Which I thought, you're the very woman that's taken away women's protections in Scotland. And then, of course, we had in America the Roe versus Wade Abortion Act being overturned. Barbaric. And again, Nicola Sturgeon on there saying how terrible it is that women's rights are being eroded, and she's shocked and stunned she is. Again,
this is Nicola Sturgeon, who refers to pregnant women as pregnant people. I've got my T-shirt on today.
Yes, I see that. Well done.
In case anyone is confused about what a woman is, because Nicola Sturgeon certainly is. You know, I'm a feminist. I have had a lifetime fighting misogyny and the patriarchy, and so has Nicola Sturgeon, or that's what she would have us believe. And yet she's part of this brigade of who call pregnant women pregnant people,
Birthers.
who say that cervical cancer happens to people as opposed to women. And, you know, she's presided over various health leaflets and pamphlets that refer to women as people. Nicola, we are women. We have vaginas, men don't. For God's sake, you've seen what's happened in America with the Roe versus Wade legislation being overturned. We're heading down that route. It's you know, we're not talking separate issues here. We're talking about the airbrushing of women's rights, how it begins, how it starts, and the scenes that came out of America in the last 48 hours have been shocking, where uniformed men have fired tear gas onto the female protesters who are trying to stand up for women's rights. It was like a scene from The Handmaid's Tale. And unfortunately, if we continue in Scotland to airbrush women's status, our visibility, you know, we will end up down the same path that American women are being dragged down. And I'm really, really worried about this. In America, they've just trampled over women's rights. And you have to wonder, who are they going to go for next? I think they'll target the gay community. It's and you know, and then after that, another community. These are very frightening times. And for Nicola Sturgeon, Scotland's First Minister, to stand up and defend women's rights 1 minute and then slap us down and say that the views of feminists when it comes to the trans issue aren't relevant is it's wrong. And she has to start and nail her colours to the mast, because she can't keep jumping in and out of this debate. Her credentials as a feminist are in tatters.
For a long ago and for a long while. But that's the thing I've said, and I say it again, she seems to be someone that just jumps on a headline. You know, where it was when she came in at first, it was, oh, well, I'm going to have a 50-50 gender cabinet, which, if you must, but I don't agree with that. I think of all the parties in the UK that didn't need to give women a help up, it was the Scottish National Party. This is the party of Wendy Wood, Margaret MacDonald, Winnie Ewing, Margaret Bain, Nicola Sturgeon herself, Jean Freeman. You know, women were doing fine, but she did it, fair dues. And then suddenly, it was the old Me Too. And then all the stuff that broke up the party, she jumped in that one. And this one, you know, Rowan Wade, I'll jump on that. I'll jump in that bandwagon. And she does it. She's going past. She did it again this week when she was at the Royal Highlands show. Good right-wing Tory thing, that. Where she jumped on the bandwagon about, this result for Boris Johnson and these two by-elections shows that he has to resign. You're going, for God's sake, why do you jump in every passing bandwagon? And as you say, she did this one about women, and yet when she was asked to describe what is, define a woman, she can't do it, won't do it. She won't turn around and say it.
Well, the same with Keir Starmer as well. It's pathetic when you think about it, that we've got a British Prime Minister who can't tell a journalist how many children he has. We've got a leader of the Labour Party who can't tell a journalist what a woman is. And we've got a First Minister, again, who gets quite stroppy when she's asked, can you give me the definition of a woman? It's absolutely ridiculous. But the biggest disappointment isn't so much the politicians, it's the journalists. And I just look at the quality of journalists today and I wonder what the hell they're teaching them in in journalist training schools these days.
As someone said, they're more like courtiers than actual journalists nowadays, I'm afraid, Yvonne.
It's embarrassing.
To go back to Nicola Sturgeon, and I'm going to quote her, it's her own tweet here, and we'll get it up on the screen. "One of the darkest days for women's rights in my lifetime. Obviously, the immediate consequences will be suffered by the women in the US, but this will embolden anti-abortion and anti-women forces in other countries too. Solidarity doesn't feel enough right now, but it's necessary. The anti-women forces in Scotland is Nicola Sturgeon. She is part of the anti-women. And yet there she is, as bold as brass, talking about, oh, we must defend women. It's incredulous, Yvonne. And eventually people have got to get sick of it.
Yeah, BBC World, when it was reporting on the legislation that came out of the Supreme Court, started talking about people who have abortions. People do not have abortions. Women do. Yes. Women have babies. Women have abortions. Yeah. Women have cervical cancer. How difficult is it to say the word women?
I agree. I mean, personally, my first wife, God rest her, we lost 2 babies through natural abortion. I'm not in favour of abortion on demand, but I accept and give I believe it's the right of every woman to choose in their own body. It's their decision. The fact that I'm opposed to it, but it's the same. A lot of people have been saying it's the Bible bashers in America. Say, oh, it's in the Bible. Look, I'm not a religious person. In fact, I'm an atheist. Much to my good friend Jeggett's disharmony, but I am an atheist. But I back their right, Yvonne. If you want to believe in God and the Bible, good on you. If it gives you comfort, I'm happy for you. I will defend your right to believe in a religion. Just don't push it down my throat and tell me I must live because you believe in a guy in the sky. There was no dinosaurs and the world's only 6,000 years old. Don't tell me I've got to believe that shit and tell me in the Bible that you can't do it. You know, I mean, that is just it.
Well, I do believe in that shit, but maybe we can have a discussion on that another time. But what is interesting, you know, the Bible bashers that you're talking about, these are the far right
Christian Bell
in America, where, you know, you look at a place like Saudi, which is very much religion-led. Women can have abortions in Saudi up until 6 months into a pregnancy. And, you know, are we going to get a ridiculous situation where women from Arkansas are going to be jumping on flights to Riyadh? It really is. I just really fear that America is just imploding and it's going to get much worse. In fact, we'll probably get plane loads of Americans flying into Heathrow soon claiming political asylum because, you know, it's going to be a really dangerous place for people to live.
But people, no one better than your very good self knows that the Americans in particular, but also in the UK, these Taliban and Islam, the way they treat their women is disgusting and it's terrible. I'm telling you, it's getting to, I mean, how dare they now? You know, the women in Islam are not getting treated like this.
Mm-hmm. Well, absolutely not. You know, I've had quite a few harrowing phone calls from Afghanistan this week about, you know, what's happened in the earthquake zone of Paktika and what they desperately need, because this is a really remote area. The roads are virtually non-existent and they need helicopters. And of course, the Americans, when they were in Kabul airport on the inside, being protected on the outside by Taliban forces, as well as helping people onto planes, the American soldiers found time to destroy over 70 helicopters and other planes to stop the Taliban from taking possession of them. And of course, you know, this earthquake zone is in such an inaccessible area. But the Americans have got a lot to answer for, and this attack on women's rights has really put them right in the crosshairs now, and we've got a first minister who won't even use the word women, pregnant women, who's standing up for women's rights. Well, I think, Nicola, sit down, we can look after ourselves.
I think it's like giving Harold Shipman a seat on the Help the Aged. I mean, it really is. It's hypocrisy on steroids. And as I say, her attack on Alec, when we need, if she's serious about Tuesday, and we will have this discussion on Tuesday afternoon, no doubt, Yvonne.
Well, I missed the attack on Alex Salmond. What did she say?
Well, she implied that, other parties, and Angus Robertson did even more, so other parties are sitting in glass houses and throwing bricks. It's just the usual stuff. And she was, referencing other people that one should reflect and one should leave politics. It's just absolutely appalling what they're doing. And if she's serious, we need to unite the Yes movement. Another bit of information that came out this week was that since COVID began, the Scottish government, between placing adverts and articles and whatnot in the Scottish media, the anti-Scottish independence, anti-Scottish media, they've spent £19 million plus a £3 million bung. So 22 million has gone to that, the records and the mails and the Express and all these other ones. Meanwhile, Nicola and her cohorts are attacking the likes of, the new media, the new independence media, and calling us a danger to independence. I would suggest, Yvonne, giving 19 million quid to the anti-Scottish independence media is a damn sight more harmful to our independence hopes than people like me with a few thousand people reading their blogs.
Absolutely. But
I think we could do with the 19 million quid.
We could, yes, we could. But the state of Scotland's media now is, I think it's in intensive care. As a journalist born in Newcastle, we used to look up to Scotland and as the place where great journalists came from. And now I have to wonder at what's happening in Scotland. Are they half asleep? Why are there no investigations into the whole process which led up to the prosecution of Alex Salmond? Why are there? It's really, I would have expected at least 3 or 4 news outlets would have held an investigation into that by now. What propelled the prosecution? Why were people called as witnesses when clearly they had absolutely nothing to say? And the ones who took the stand, and now we can see quite clearly some of them blatantly lied, why have they not been prosecuted? What the whole of the judicial system is in the dock at the moment, and the media should be charging and leading with the questions, but they're not. And I'm really, even with the Birmingham 6 and the Guildford 4, all these cases of rough justice, at least a handful of journalists from the mainstream media really dug and never let go until they got to the bottom of the story. And there's absolutely nothing has come out from the Scottish media at the moment.
I would suggest this. Let me run this past you. Noam Chomsky, when he was on the Andrew Marr show, and he said to him, well, you wouldn't be here if you didn't think the way you do. And I would suggest it's the exact same for the journalists, oblique, I would call them hacks, in the Scottish media. And the Scottish media, like all the media in the UK, is owned by 5 or 6 offshore, tax-avoiding, right-wing nutter billionaires. And it's, when you're asking someone to write for the, don't ask them to do something that's going to go against their wages, because they'll not be writing for the paper for long if they do anything that's going to offend these owners. And these owners are very anti-Scottish independence. I mean, there is never anything. Have you ever noticed in the Scottish press, they almost break their necks by not saying anything, the most minute thing critical about the UK or the Union or anything that's happening. But they can't wait to jump in anything bad about Scotland. And by the same token, they never talk up Scotland on anything. From the front page to the back page. It's, well, know your place, keep down, keep down. That's the problem. And they're all batting for the other side. Every one of them batting for the other side. When Murray Ritchie worked for the Herald, who was a well-known independence supporter, he was warned if he wrote anything that came across as remotely pro-independence, his job was gone. That's the problem. Nothing else.
Well, they say that we get the media that we deserve.
Well, what did we do to deserve this lot?
I think that we need to be more proactive and start holding the media to account. We've got a situation where Julian Assange is going to America and could be on a one-way trip and
175 years
in prison. Yeah.
175 years he stands to get jailed. I mean, it's ridiculous. America's a barbaric country. Barbaric.
And what has he done? All he's done is tell the truth, shine a light on a war crime that the American military carried out when they murdered a Reuters news crew. And yet there he is going off to America, and there is no palpable outrage in the media.
No, there's not. And you wouldn't see it either. And we know that, again, I'm going back to what Nicola may or may not say on Tuesday, and if it is all stations go, they will get on their good pro-Westminster typewriters out, and they will be attacking Scotland from every angle, every single angle. But we've not to worry, because one of the important issues that's going on just now, and maybe the media will pick up it as well, the SNP have, one of their young MSPs, come in last year, has brought in a bill to pardon witches from the 16th century. Now, with all this austerity going on and unemployment and possibly World War III, I think it's fantastic that the SNP are worrying about pardoning witches from the 16th century. Do you ever sometimes read something, Yvonne, and just go, what?
Yeah, it's it really, well, I'm struggling to find words, which is unusual for me. But I'll tell you how, again, hypocritical that is. When I was a member of the SNP, a story started breaking at Durham Cathedral, and it was a mass grave of soldiers from the Battle of Dunbar that had been discovered by university students doing some sort of archaeological dig. And I started looking into this business and said, what are we going to do? When I'm saying we, I'm an adopted Scot now, and it's like, what are we going to do about these bodies? Oh, well, they'll just be reburied back in the grounds of Durham Cathedral, and there'll be a no doubt a service for them. And I said, no, this is wrong. Every single one of those soldiers fought in Dunbar, fought for his country, and his body should be brought back. Every single one of them. And they should be given a military funeral. And it, I tried to raise it with various MSPs and couldn't get any interest at all. And I just found that quite shocking. So these soldiers, Scottish soldiers who were brutalised by Cromwell and died as prisoners of war, they've just been tossed back into the ground at Durham Cathedral, and that's been the end of it. And I just find that that's shocking. But
witches are going to be pardoned, so we're okay.
Yeah,
all is well with the world. Things have been happening in the UK as well that are affecting Scotland or will affect Scotland. And one of the ones was it came out, and again, it disappeared off the face of the earth, going back onto journalism, Yvonne. And that was the Telegraph, or the Times. No, the Times came out with a story showing that, well, Carrie was one of Boris's many mistresses before she became one of his very many wives. He was it was after, I think he just dumped Jennifer Crury, who he tried to get $100,000 job. He tried to get Carrie $100,000 job in the Foreign Office. And this was quick. It went on to the Times, the first edition, and a good Scottish word. It was whisked away quicker than you could say Jack Robinson. And the Times, which used to be that bastion of, if it was in the Times, it was true and you could depend on it. It's just quite despicable what the journalists do nowadays.
Well, it's not the journalists, is it? It's the editors and the publishers. So
it goes back to what I was saying about these offshore guys.
It really, well, the journalist is standing by his story, and it wasn't just one job that Boris Johnson was trying to get his mistress, now his wife. I think he was trying to get her 2 jobs. So, yeah, Boris Johnson is a man who has no shame at all.
No.
And, there he is, virtually Teflon coated. And I still think that despite this, these shocking results in the by-election for the Tories, I still think he will survive. Mm-hmm. And I think now we can see why he was in such a hurry to get that no confidence vote out of the way ahead of the by-elections.
You did hear that
here first. They're not going to go for another one in such a short time.
Yeah, we did. I did mention that actually a couple of weeks ago. I mentioned that that was exactly what he was trying to do before these by-elections came. That it was because that would have finished him off. But that goes back to what I was talking about. Nicola, she's saying, "Oh yeah, terrible, and he should resign." Don't be. I mean, we want him to stay in place. He's the best recruiting sergeant for our independence movement. Why would you want to remove him, Nicola? Are you mental?
Absolutely. I think that we've got more chance of getting Scottish independence with Boris in at number 10 and Nicola out of Bute House.
I'll second that motion, and I'm sure our viewers would agree with you. The other thing, you mentioned Starmer earlier, and I want to come on. I'm going to keep saying Mick Lynch, who a working class hero for the left, and the strike of the RMT, which is I'd like to discuss in depth. But the first thing I'm going to do is, in my lifetime, Yvonne, I would never have believed, one, that a leader of the Labour Party would be a knight of the realm. That I would never have believed. But secondly, I would never have believed them warning Labour MPs not to dare go on a picket line and support striking workers. I mean, It's like saying, right, Tories, do not be supporting tax havens and the CBI. It is that ridiculous.
Keir Starmer is a loathsome individual, and he was best summed up in a tweet a few weeks ago when somebody described him as the Ken Barlow of politics. And for those of you who don't watch Coronation Street, Ken Barlow is the most boring man in soap. And, you mentioned Lynch. What a fantastic breath of fresh air he is. He's not at all political. He calls a spade a shovel and he gets on with it. He's just a total breath of fresh air, and the media can't handle him. Last weekend, he was swatting them all away like flies, and they were coming after him, and he just, as I say, swatted them away. He's very much out of the same mould as Bob Crow, the late Bob Crow, who was also an RMT man. I don't know what the RMT do to train their officials, but they should share it, because Bob Crow was brilliant as well. His heart was with the workers, and he suffered from a media backlash, but he took it head on, and the media at the moment, I would imagine, will be going through
his bins.
Will be going through everything to try and get some dirt on this man. But he's an absolute breath of fresh air, and I just hope that other trade unions start to look up to the RMT and follow them, and instead of what we've had in the past, which has been some very wishy-washy material.
Yeah, the problem was, to me, the Labour Party, actually the class war was lost when Labour switched sides, and it switched sides when Tony Blair screwed Clause 4. That was it, and we got trade union leaders who were part of the establishment. But it goes back beyond that. I mean, I remember in my time, Lord Feather, it was Vic Feather who was the head of the TUC, took a peerage. I thought, that's not right. That just is not right. But Mick, as you say, is a throwback. And they even tried to associate him with, because Arthur Scargill stood in a picket line there during the week, and the press were onto it, trying to align him with that. And then, of course, Kay Burley, God love her wee cotton socks. She thinks she's a journalist, by the way. She was trying to imply that the picket line of the RMT would be like the miners' picket line, and they would be fighting and violence and attacking the police. And that's what she was trying to imply. And he, as you say, he just swatted it away with ease. But you're right, they're going to come after him. I wrote about it today in a blog. And the problem is, if the RMT lose, we all lose, Yvonne. They have got to win this dispute.
Yeah, well, look at, you mentioned Arthur Scargill. I remember when Arthur Scargill brought out a list of pits that he said Thatcher wanted to close, and the tabloids attacked him and ridiculed him and undermined him at every move. And then after the strike was over, the very same pits that he had named in the list went.
To go. Yeah.
And yes, I mean, I think Arthur Scargill might be a tragic figure now, but people would do well to read up, if they're not old enough, to read up on the history and look back at how the Tories went to war with the NUM and destroyed it.
Yeah, I mean, and again, Kinnock didn't cover himself in glory during the miners' strike either. He didn't show enough solidarity with the miners. We talked about, America. If you take the Republican and Democratic Party, there's not a lot between them. There's just a couple of things here and there, but there really is not much difference. And it's the same, unfortunately, in the UK, Yvonne, because you know, Margaret Thatcher, you know, said her greatest creation was New Labour, and she wasn't wrong. Because if you and I were away for 10 years, didn't know anything that was happening in the UK, and we come back, and it was a Labour government, we didn't know which one it was, we would be struggling to know which government was in place, wouldn't we?
Yeah, absolutely. It's, you know, I'm not happy to see the way the Labour Party has gone. I joined it as a teenager, and, you know, my background was very much working class. And now I look at these liberal elite who are in this party. You know, Keir Starmer is flanked by them, and they don't represent the working classes.
No. David Lammy, yesterday I think it was, or today it might have been, has said that we will not be going back into the EU. A Labour government will not go back into the EU, will not go into the single market, will not go into the customs union. They won't do anything. And by the way, Scotland, you're not getting you will never get a referendum. Not democratic, and certainly not looking out for the working class, because they're scared that they upset. I go back to these 5 or 6 media barons. They're more worried about upsetting them than actually protecting the working class and the non-working class and the pensioners. They would rather hurt them than offend the press barons. That's my opinion.
No, you're quite right. And David Lammy is another politician burdened by his own self-importance. I remember having a discussion with him a few months ago after the Taliban came to power, and he said, this is a disaster for the LGBTQ community in Afghanistan. And I said, what community? You know, nobody is, there are no gay nightclubs in Kabul. There never have been. And, you know, they just seem to spout any sort of nonsense, and nobody challenges them on it. And when they do get challenged, they don't know how to respond.
Yeah, they shout abuse. That's what they do when you pull them up. But the other one is that, you know, they're now, it seems, and again, the Labour Party's not doing much about it, getting rid of the European Convention on Human Rights and bringing in a British Bill of Rights, which frightens the living Jesus out of me. God knows what that will be like. And, you know, what rights will we have? You know, you have the right to do as you're told. You have the right to maybe vote now and again. I mean, what rights do you think it will give us? Not many.
Well, what sort of implications will it have in Scotland? Because, of course, Scotland has its own legal system.
Yeah.
So I think that we miss a lot of opportunities because we've got this different legal system. I think that we should be using the courts more to challenge the Westminster government.
I agree.
And this is something that doesn't seem to be done very easily.
No, it's breaking the Treaty of Union, getting rid of the European Convention on Human Rights. I would imagine, I'm not a lawyer. Any lawyers that are watching this, do tell us if I'm right, but that seems to me it breaks the Treaty of Union.
Yeah, I mean, there are loads of opportunities that I can see where lawyers for the Scottish government could try and take on the Westminster government. And, you know, look at Joanna Cherry, QC. She had a couple of really stunning victories for Scotland using her legal nous as a Westminster MP. Sadly, she wasn't given the encouragement because of this personality clash with Nicola Sturgeon and herself. But she's got a brilliant legal brain, and she managed successfully to challenge the Westminster government.
Yeah, but apparently Anne McLaughlin's a greater legal mind, as she's now the justice spokesman for the SNP at Westminster. She does it by interpretive dance, I believe. But you're right, we should be pushing the boat out, but it takes political will, and I don't know how many times we've said that one here, Yvonne. It's the political will, and Nicola does not have the political will to challenge the establishment. It goes back to what I was talking about the Labour Party, who are worried about offending the press barons and the elite. Nicola Sturgeon's the exact same up in Scotland. She seems more concerned about not offending the right-wing, middle-class, upper-class in Scotland and the foreign-owned controlled media in Scotland than she is in enthusing her own movement and her own supporters and the independence cause. And that is the problem in our movement.
Well, yeah, I mean, well, we'll have to wait and see what she's going to come up with on Tuesday. What do you think do you think she's going to name a date? I mean, we've got September, so it's...
No, it was October. Angus Robertson said October.
Oh, it's October.
He said October. So, what I think, okay, my personal opinion, I think there'll be a lot of word salad. And I think at the end of it, when we're talking on Tuesday, we'll all be scratching our heads going, what did you make of that? Because I don't think any of it will be, maybe it'll be Kenny Dalglish stuff, maybe it's aye and maybe no. And I think we'll be none the wiser. I've got a funny feeling we'll neither be up the hill or down the hill. I think we'll be somewhere in the middle of the hill, wondering what the hell's going on.
Well, as I say, I'd love us to be wrong. I would.
So would I.
You know, nobody would be happier if she just said, right, we're going for independence, we're going to do it on this day, and this is how it's going to be done. And, well, we can guess or second guess as long as we like. We're just going to have to wait for Super Tuesday.
Super Tuesday. Here's what I would like her to say. I would like her to say, I don't believe in it. You know, I make my caveat every time. I don't believe in a referendum. Certainly not with a local authority franchise. But that's another story for another day. If that's what we've got, I'll take it and I'm in. As we said last week, I'm in. But I would like her to say, we want our Section 30 Boris with no restrictions, no caveats. We name the time, we name the question, we name the date, end of story, and you don't interfere. And if you say no to that, every election from here on in is going to be a plebiscite election under the claim of right of Scotland. That's what I would like her to say. Whether she says that or not, as they say in Scotland, I hear my doots, but we shall see, Yvonne, we shall see. The clock's beating us again, but fortunately, now that we've finished sort of softening everyone up, the wonderful Roger Anderson, our resident historian, is going to follow this along, which is he's doing the Medieval Highlands. It wasn't tribal, but it was a sophisticated seafaring Gaelic kingdom, and there was not a kilt in sight in his report, which is quite apt in this week, or that we're maybe getting a ferry again back to Europe, into Europe. Our history was very much seafaring. And so that's just coming up here. But just let me remind you all again, folks, to be with myself and Yvonne and Phil, hopefully, work permitting, and Tommy Sheridan and Neil Hanvey and Eva Comrie and maybe a couple others where we discuss. It could be a very short programme for March Down the Hill. It could be a very long programme. But we'll see on Tuesday. But till we see you on Tuesday, please, please, please take care.
Hi, this time I'm not stationary, I'm walking, and I'm in the west, so it's raining. I'm actually on Skye, and apologies for any rain that gets on the camera, but as you might have noticed in the east, it wasn't raining too much, but today it's wet. I'm at a place which I'm actually exploring today, having heard about it and not seen it myself, read about it. It's a place called St. Columba's Island, and it's supposed to be the place where St. Columba, when he came to Skye, preached in 593. And it's not only that, but it's the site of the Cathedral Church of the Isles, and the home of the Bishop of the Isles, originally from 1079 to 1498. And it's also the burial place of a great many local Nicholson clan chiefs and a great many others. Apparently 28 clan chiefs are buried here, going way back. Now, I'm going to walk as I talk, so apologies for any bounces. And I've got a very dodgy bridge to now cross, so if I'm falling over, disappearing, dropping the camera, that's probably because the bridge has given way underneath me. I'm just looking at my my footsteps here, just to see that there's no holes I'm standing on. So I'm walking. I'm in the sort of ski boast area, walking over the over a river. The river, small river, onto a little island in the middle, little river ski resort in the middle of the river is an island, and I can see pathways around about me. In fact, I'm going to turn this around and we'll go for an explore, and I'll talk about a few things as we explore about the history of the Highlands and how it's been misrepresented, and hopefully I'll find a few graves to illustrate that. Okay, buildings. There are buildings here. There was a chapel, a cathedral, a number of burials. There are burials that are after the disappearance of the bishopric. Seems to have disappeared around about the time of the disappearance of the Lordship of the Isles. What have we got here? We've got Murdo MacDougall, 1921. So people were clearly viewing this as hallowed ground. This building is far older. There are supposed to be religious buildings on this site going back to the 6th century. And here's one of our first conundrums. What happened to the Picts in this area? Oh my goodness. Right, I'm going to leave that conundrum, because look what I found. Okay, look at this. Look at this. I've seen similar in the north, actually, of the island. One grave, not as well preserved as this. Goodness, yes. This is very cool. Okay. Yes, one grave in the north at Kilmuir, where there's a small cemetery. Flora MacDonald's buried there, and at the far end of the cemetery there is a grave very similar to this. Now, I've often seen these described online as Crusader graves. Why are they described as Crusader graves by people? Well, look, can you see the great broadsword? Can you see the way he's dressed? So what are people going to think in the modern era? Oh, this is a Crusader, but why is he here? You know, weren't our ancestors in the Highlands running around in kilts? Braveheart, painting themselves blue? No, they weren't. The Isles and this part of Scotland, was actually a great Gaelic kingdom. Yeah, they fought amongst each other. Very Game of Thrones like, a lot of brutality. This river saw decapitated bodies thrown into it after one episode between, I think, the MacLeods and the MacDonalds. But the MacDonalds were the preeminent lords of the Isles. They ran great sea fleets across the oceans, trading. They dressed like this. Forget Braveheart. This is a great quilted tunic. Underneath there would have been chain mail. Great broadswords, I mean enormous broadswords. Now you might argue that some of these are an exaggeration, but you can see the bottom of the broadsword there, and it's running up above his hand, really up to his chest. There. That's quite something. Now these graves probably date to the 1400s, so we're talking late-ish medieval. There's plenty more over here. There's some more modern graves. Let's keep walking. But we have this image placed in our heads over the last 3 centuries, really, that the west of Scotland, the northwest of Scotland, the Highlands were something apart and something primitive. And a lot of this originates with, again I'm going to mention it, post-Culloden propaganda. The idea that Scotland was generally quite primitive, but particularly primitive were the people of the Highlands, and they were, as a result, removed, a great many of them. It justified clearance. In reality, if you go back to the 1400s and before, there was, as I said, a sophisticated Gaelic civilization here. Here's more ruins. Look at this. There's something amongst this tree as well. This is possibly, I don't know. Hopefully there's some signage somewhere to tell me exactly, because I don't have a map of this. Not to hand. The internet's not brilliant here. Let's go in. Oh, look at that. It's another one. Good grief. Wow, this time the broadsword isn't... These are the original claymores, my friends. It isn't actually as big. I've seen giant ones on Islay. But look at that, he's grasping his broadsword. Look at that. Presumably a chapel. Where was I? Well, if I can't remember, I'll make it up. So yeah, this idea that the Highlands were primitive, were somehow backwards. The point was that the Highlands had not developed in the same way as the South. When I say the South, I really mean south of the border. The influence of the Normans, Norman feudalism, Norman property. Here we have the concept of the dulcus. Again, for any Gaelic speakers, apologies if I pronounce these wrong. I'm trying my best, honest. Oh, here's one from 1773. Father of the evangelical religion on the Isle of Skye. 1773 to 1830. So we've got a number of post-Reformation graves here as well. Look at that. There's more. You know, this reminds me of Finn Lagan on Skye. I keep jumping about, but these things fire off thoughts. This reminds me of Finlagan on Islay, which was the capital of the Lords of the Isles. Now, anyone who knows their sort of, modern day, what can I say, makeup of the Highlands, or more recent makeup of the Highlands, knows that that's, whose land is that? That's not MacDonald land. Capital of the Lordship of the Isles, Lordship of the Isles. The MacDonalds were preeminent, the MacDonalds were the Lords of the Isles. Who's there? The Campbells. You might be able to guess at some of the antipathy between the Campbells, who were interlopers in the Highlands, and the MacDonalds and other clans. Oh yeah, there were rivalries back in the medieval era. There were murders, there were killings, sorts of events that would have made great scripts, and in some cases did actually, for Game of Thrones. But they were particularly disliked. Hey, there's a Calvinist grave. We've got a real interesting mixture here. This is a Calvinist grave. I recognise it from many other places. I don't know what the date is on this. AD. In fact, that might be an AD 18. I'm surprised at that, because most of them are 16, 1700s. But what we've got here is a skull and crossbones, which you might associate with pirates. I'm not sure where the pirates got it from, actually, I have to admit, but that's not where it first appears. 18th century pirates, a lot of whom were rebels against the British Empire, by the way. This represents death. We've got a number of other symbols on here. I recognise that one. That's an hourglass. That represents the passing of time. The fact that we're all here for only a certain amount of time. I can't work out whether these are more crossbones, or whether these are digging or working tools. Quite often you get tools that represent work, and that's linking together the whole concept of work is godly, work is holy. You can better yourself through work. That's the Protestant work ethic, and you suddenly see it after the Reformation appearing. The knights' graves are much, much older, of course, and that represents a society which is hierarchical in many ways, including in the Highlands. But going back to what I was saying, in the Highlands and a lot of the rest of Scotland, as we're discovering, was affected by this. There wasn't a strict Norman feudal. We were never invaded by the Normans anyway. We invited them into certain areas, at least the Scottish kings did, to control. I can see there's a lot of stones on the ground here. These are presumably the remains of buildings. I can get in here. Well, there's walls here. There's quite a number of buildings, unless I'm fooling myself with the... Now, whether there's a central building. Apparently this wasn't a massive cathedral, but it was a cathedral. It was the seat of the Bishop of the Isles, and that at one time stretched right the way down to the Isle of Man. So once again, let's go back to where I was. So property rights, property ownership, that sort of Norman feudal thing that develops into the modern day concept of ownership. And that Anglo-Saxon thing, which in reality really comes from the Normans. The whole thing, I mean, America in many ways is founded on that. And England was definitely founded on that. And that's the big disruption when you come to the period after Culloden. It's the imposition of an alien system on a culture, particularly in the Highlands, that didn't. It was changing, it has to be said, but it didn't recognise that the sense of individual ownership, the sense of a landowner, a hereditary landowner who owned everything and could do what they wanted with people. That's what caused a lot of the shock for a great many people during the clearances. Because before that, the concept was that land was held in common. Clan chiefs were chosen. These are foundations. This is a much bigger, I think, this is a much bigger building here than it looks, I think. Yeah, that's a wall just there. Possibly the Nicholson Isle, which apparently has a number of Nicholson burials. I don't know. Intriguing, isn't it? It's quite nice to just come to a place for the first time and sort of slot it into. This is more foundation here. This has been a much bigger building. Here, this must be the cathedral. Hear the excitement in my voice. The Highlands had hung on to that concept, that idea that everyone held the land, everyone held property to an extent in common. Now that obviously didn't suit a lot of the ruling elites, possibly some of the clan chiefs, and things were changing in the 18th century, but it happened overnight in the 1740s for a great many people. Prior to the 1840s, they would have had a say in who became clan chief. If the eldest son of a chief was not held to be suitable, another member of the family would be chosen instead, because he wouldn't have the it would have been a male. He wouldn't have had the confidence of the people. There's an element of democracy in here, and you see that in the Council of the Isles and other, Google it, and other elements of society in these parts, and that filters into the rest of Scotland. We see it in the Declaration of Arbroath. We see it in the Claim of Right. The sense that people have a place, people have a belonging. We all have a commonality, and that is the direct antithesis, the opposite of that sense of Anglo-Saxon hierarchy and property ownership. And that's something I think that culturally we possibly need to rediscover. There we go, guys. So St. Columba's Isle. I'm going to go back across that bridge. There's a tiny sign here. What does it say? Oh, it says it's Commonwealth War Grave. There you go. So there's people clearly being buried here as late as the 20th century. In fact, I think I've probably videoed a couple of 20th century. So the local people remember that this site is special. So there we go. I've talked for long enough. I'm almost at 20 minutes according to my timer here. Maybe I'll get edited down. Let's hope so. Anyway, thanks. See you another time.